Welcome to the Kick Sugar Coach podcast. Join me each week as I interview experts who will share the science of sugar, sugar addiction, and different approaches to recovery. We hope to empower you with the information and inspiration, insights, and strategies you need to break up with sugar and fall in love with healthy whole foods so you can prevent and reverse chronic disease, lose weight, boost your mood and energy. Feel free to go to my website for details on my coaching programs and to access free resources, kicksugarcoach.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. So I have with me today colleagues and friends in the unfolding and two amazing superstars in the sugar addiction, food addiction recovery space. We have Molly Painschab and Clarissa Kennedy. And I'll tell you a little bit about Molly. Molly's been working in this space of mental health and addiction recovery since 2005, so 16 years, going on 17. She has gone on to be the co-host to the Food Junkies Podcast. She's currently collaborating with a new company with Clarissa. They're going to be teaming up called Sweet Sobriety. And even more interestingly, potentially, or equally interesting, is that the two of them have been contracted to lead the world's first ever clinical research project on food addiction recovery. And it's a project that's being funded by PHC, the Public Health Collaborative out of the UK. It's an international project, so they have clients or research participants in their program from around the world. And we're going to talk a fair bit about this project because it's pretty groundbreaking. And I think that when governments clue in, if we actually get people unhooked from processed refined carbohydrates and look at it, at least in part for many people as an addiction, we might save billions of dollars. So I think this project is going to really be a game changer across the planet. Clarissa, similar, she's a mental health and addictions counselor certified in that. She's been working in the space for 12 years. And she's also a registered social worker, and both of them have their own journeys of recovery from food addiction, sugar addiction. So they're bringing the professional and the personal experience into their careers now. So welcome, Molly and Clarissa.
Hello, thanks for having us, Florence.
Thanks, thank you.
So how did this amazing first ever clinical research project get off the ground, and how were you two so lucky to be selected to be the lead coaches on this, or counselors?
Yeah, I'll take that one if you want, Clarissa. So what happened was Clarissa and I were actually in conversation about creating this Sweet Sobriety, and I reached out to Jen, who is a colleague, and asked her to just look at some of the curriculum that we were designing. We just wanted a second pair of eyes on it. And she responded back with, you know what? We're putting together a team or a few teams to do this research. Would you guys be interested in doing that? And so we put a pause on what we were doing back a year or more ago already, and said yes. And that's how we were invited, essentially, and that's how we got into this. I mean, am I missing anything on that one, Clarissa?
No, I think it helped. We both had a clinical background in it for sure. And it just all came together kind of at the exact right time where they had gotten the okay. They were looking for kind of a North American team. And it's been super exciting to be involved in this.
So where are the goals and objectives of this pilot project?
So I think what we're looking to see is definitely health measures change over time, whether that's body mass index changing. So it's not just that. We also want to see recovery from food addiction, right? So we want to see the behavioral pieces some of those getting resolved, and also like the obsession around food and the ability to remain abstinent, whatever that looks like for the individual that is participating. We kind of started with just gave them a bunch of food plans that they could kind of design for themselves as to what would be abstinent, free from sugar and flour. Some of them may include grains, but that's up to the participant. And of course, we support them over 10 weeks. We have a group every single week, and that is, we cover things like abstinence and withdrawal, mindful eating, craving management, hope. We do cues and triggers. We do stress management, emotional eating, building body acceptance, cognitive distortion. So we cover pretty much the basis, and we created it in a way that would kind of match where people would be at each week of recovery. And so it's kind of their own community. And so after the 10 weeks, we meet with them once a month, and we'll follow them for 2 years. And then we will kind of see where these individuals are at. We just are about to wrap up group 3, and it's been really fantastic seeing people connect to each other, because that is what all these individuals were missing. They were all trying to do something on their own, and then now they have this community, and so eventually they're all going to be part of our sweet sobriety community. So it's just been this dual passion project, which has really come together in the best way.
Oh my gosh. And what are you seeing? So you've had 2 groups go through, and you've got a third one almost at the end here. What are some of the early results?
So what we're seeing so far, that we're just now in the process of cleaning up and analyzing the data, because we're getting ready to present in Bristol in May at the first International Food Addiction Conference, where people are going to get to see some of those preliminary results. But so far what we're seeing is that there's been an overall trend in improvement on their craved scores, which is one of the screens that we use, the WebMS, which measures quality of life kind of stuff. So we're seeing these overall improvements. We're seeing BMI drop. Waist circumference is all over the place right now, just because people are having a difficult time measuring waist circumference. So like Clarissa was saying, overall, what we're seeing is just this trend of improved mood, improved self-efficacy, improved self-esteem, just these improvements. And it's really showing up in this community that they are building. We have a flourishing WhatsApp group. They check in with each other every day. Hey, I'm committing to an abstinent day. Hey, I'm about to walk into this really stressful social situation, and I don't want to eat these things. We're seeing it in the Facebook group that we have going on too. So even those things that we can't fully measure, as clinicians working with these folks every week, we are seeing improvements just grow exponentially.
Have you seen things like diabetes start to reverse themselves? I'm assuming that's been happening.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have worked with other clients. I don't know, Molly, were you gonna? Oh, yeah. So definitely, the markers and the health markers are improving, right? And we know with abstinence and type 2 diabetes that reversal can happen. And so it's definitely trending towards that. It's still a new project. So that, I would love to see, what are we talking about even 1 year in? And then what are we seeing 2 years? Because I think that's when it's going to be really, really exciting.
Right. And, that really brings us all back to some of the research that we see out of addiction about how long it takes for the brain to repair, right? And we're seeing 2 years. Now, I think, this is my own little theory, but I think that because we're dealing with food addiction, maybe it would be quicker for some of us, because I think some of that research is coming out of the drug and alcohol recovery space, and they're not necessarily transitioning off of drugs and alcohol and onto whole foods, where there might be the potential for a bit quicker brain recovery. But I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes. And that's where I think this is important, because we're not dealing, I guess I should back that up. We have plenty of clients who are also coming off of other substances within this program. They're starting to realize how important it is to be on their food sober journey, that they need to get off of these other things like the alcohol, the cannabis, the whatever. And so these research groups are actually showing us, I feel like there's going to be some evidence there to really take back to the traditional substance use disorder communities and say, listen, look at these folks who have these other outlets going on, and they're getting off of, not only are they getting off of the junk food, the garbage, the whatever, but they're also getting off of these other substances, and they are making improvements so much faster than I've ever seen anybody in the traditional sense, traditional clients. I've never seen it like this. It's amazing.
Right. It goes back to the idea that if you take out all of the potential different ways that we're, to quote Dr. Anna Lemke, which she calls it titillating our dopamine receptors, right? Like this constant tweaking and titillating. It's like, man, if we can sweep them all clean and get the whole foods in and all the other supports that you guys are talking about, people have a chance to completely restore, maybe to factory settings, but at least to a much, much better quality of life all at once in one fell swoop. Instead of leaving the door open to, okay, I'm sugar flour free, but now I'm like hooked into this. I'm drinking more coffee or eating whatever, more almonds or something, or I'm smoking more pot or I'm drinking more wine or something like that, which is common in addictions, isn't it?
Yeah, we do. Week 4 is addiction interaction disorder. So the first 3 weeks are really focused on let's get abstinent, let's focus on the food, let's focus on withdrawal and how to manage that, because they really do that needs to be the full-time job in the beginning. And then it's like, that's when, once you get that abstinence, that's when the other stuff starts to pop up. And it's maybe the shopping or, relationship or stuff like that they didn't even think that could be part of their story. And I think what helps is when you're doing this one-on-one, there's not as much conversation and discussion around what addiction interaction might look like. But when it's a group and one person is brave enough to get vulnerable and speak about what they have been noticing, it's like this flood of like, oh, I can relate. And, oh, has anyone seen this? Whereas, in that one-on-one session, you don't see that kind of insight into addiction behavior.
Mm-hmm. Right. So talk to us a bit more about the process that you walk people through over 10 weeks. So we start with the detox, you get them abstinent, you get them on meal plans that they can tweak to their own sort of body. And then after that, what happens?
Yeah, so the first 3 weeks are really just dealing with the food, lots of questions about the food, abstinence, withdrawal, like really managing withdrawal symptoms, that kind of thing. Those are the first 3 weeks, cravings, triggers, that kind of thing. Week 4 is addiction interaction disorder. So really showing up, like Clarissa was saying, and talking about, hey, maybe it's showing up if the food is fine, it's showing up in relationships, or the food is fine, relationships are fine, but now I'm spending, or having those conversations. Week 5 is my favorite week. It's right in the messy middle. It's our hope week. And we invite people, 3 to 4 people to come and share their personal stories of recovery. And that is really the turning point for so many of these folks, right? Because they've been struggling for 3-4 weeks to like get some sort of groove going, get through the withdrawal. They hear these stories of like, yeah, it was really tough. And then it was even tougher. And then it got better. And oh, yep, sometimes it's still tough, but hey, it's amazing. Just hearing those stories. And then we get into, after that, then we start getting into emotion management, stress management. We do that, emotional eating. We talk about increasing self-compassion. We talk about body image. So like Clarissa was saying, it's really this progression of what we imagine just from years of experience doing this within the substance use disorder world, right? We know there's this trajectory. And so we've really just kind of tried to pare it down to 10 weeks. We know it's a drop in the bucket. We know this is not what everybody needs, but it's enough to dip their toes each week. And there's assignments that they're given each week, to show up and present. Probably the most pivotal assignment we have is a breaking up with sugar, garbage, food, fill in the blank, whatever letter. That's probably the most powerful assignment that we have because people get vulnerable. They get so vulnerable. And each week has some form of assignment that they show up and present and we share about and, and then they get feedback from their peers and they get feedback from us. And Clarissa and I are co-facilitating. It's never just one of us. We're there showing up every week, right? So we're consistent and their group members are consistent and it really is building that therapeutic relationship. That then we see these people flourish and they get sad. They're sad. We end tomorrow for the first 10 weeks and they're sad. I'm sad, but we'll see each other again once a month and we'll have the Facebook groups and the WhatsApp group, but it's just super impactful and it's really neat to watch that happen. So yeah, that's what we do. And then we're taking that same model and this is what we'll be applying to sweet sobriety. So even though the research will be limited because we only need so many folks for this initial leg of the research. Clarissa and I are developing Sweet Sobriety to play off of what we've found, to take these research findings and apply them to what we're doing. So there will be more opportunities if people have missed the opportunity for the research aspect of it.
Got it. So what you're saying is that when the research project ends, you will transition this into a coaching program that you guys will both co-facilitate, and then they can be clients.
Yeah, exactly. And it was when we started this, we knew we just needed what is a baseline of treatment for food addiction. And that's kind of what this study is. What we hope to be able to offer is more intensive opportunities, because we know food needs it. And so there would be more check-ins, there'll be, more modules, because it's a research study. We go through the process, but we can't modify anything with each group because it has to be standardized. So what we get to do with Sweet Sobriety is basically elaborate on all the things we've determined, like, maybe we need more time on codependency or other recovery, managing like anxiety or boundaries or other parts of recovery that people really need to get more support around. And so we'll be just trying to figure out exactly what we can do with what we've learned from doing this already. We probably have 2 more groups, I think, looking at starting in June, a daytime group and an evening group. And then hopefully we will have enough data by then, and then we'll be able to focus full time on the Sweet Sobriety.
Very, very cool. Tell us, in terms of practical takeaways that people can take from this interview, what would you say are some of the best strategies for dealing with difficult emotions? Like, people can be doing really great for a long time, feeling peaceful, feeling good, and then something takes the wind out of their sails. Stress spikes, something bad happens, and they just go back to the comfort. What are some interventions that you guys teach your participants in this research project?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things is it's really basic. And first and foremost, it's acceptance. We're human beings. We have a part of our brain that is specifically for feeling. We are so accustomed to believing that we have positive and negative emotions, or good and bad days, and all of this, whatever. And the truth is that our brain, there is a very strong and old part of our brain, our reptilian brain, that actually doesn't care if we're happy. It doesn't care if our bodies are aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't care about anything except for survival. And that part of our brain will always hijack the rest of it when it feels unsafe. And so, part of dealing with difficult emotions is acceptance that, like, oh, wow, look at that. I'm a human being and I'm having I'm in grief. I'm grieving something, or I'm super stressed out because my boss yelled at me and my car started on fire and my cat ran away, all in the same week. Right. So it starts with acceptance. So, that in and of itself is a skill that needs to be learned and practiced over and over and over again. I think another way that is super helpful for anybody, whether they be in food addiction recovery or not, and dealing with some of these, tougher situations, is seeking support, right? If I have somebody that I can lean on and just tell them what I'm going through, it lightens the burden, not because they're taking it on for me so much as I now feel and I feel seen and heard, right? And I feel like I'm not so alone in knowing that this is the thing that's happening in my life. So those would be where I would start with people. Clarissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I think what's been really helpful too is for us, we usually give the individuals a feelings wheel, because all of the individuals we work with, a lot of the time, they don't even know what they're feeling. And they may think you have happy, sad, mad, glad, or whatever, but it's like, oh, I'm actually feeling fear, or I'm actually feeling jealous, or I'm feeling vulnerable. And so for them to be able to specifically identify what they are feeling, then they can figure out, how do I get that need met? Right. And it's obviously not with food. So what are some other things? If I need love, how do I get love? Because, you have all these people around you. So you have usually the tools that you need. You just need to become aware of them. And that, these feelings pass. right? Just because I'm feeling sad for a moment doesn't mean I'm going to feel sad all day. And that we've been stuffing these feelings for so long. So when we stop using, they start to come up, and holy cow, are they amplified? They are not always going to be this strong, but they're going to feel like on 100 on a scale of 1 to 10 at the beginning. And when I'm sad, I am so sad. And when I am happy, it's the best day in the world. And I'm so excited to be alive. But that they do start after time to start to get to that middle ground where it is just, oh, I think I feel happy today, or I feel a little bit sad. And, we tell them, like, you need to if you haven't cried in a while, put on that. Oh, I was listening to the Beck's interview yesterday, and she said, like, a Pixar movie, that it's like tear porn, pretty much. You're gonna cry even if you don't feel like it. And what we often find is maybe that first cry, it's gonna be the biggest, ugliest cry, and that's okay. And so really to just embrace the emotions they are feeling instead of trying to change it, because that's what we're told, right? As a woman, maybe I'm not allowed to show up angry, but we're human, we are angry, and that's okay. And so to also identify, like, anger is usually a surface emotion. So what's underneath that? Is it resentment? And usually resentment is all about because we haven't asked for what we need. And for most of the individuals we work with, they just don't know how. And so then we try to work with them on, how do I communicate what I need to the people in my life? And once we identify that, then we know how to cope so much better with our emotions.
Absolutely. In your own journeys through addiction and recovery, do you remember moments in your own life where you had like that big breakdown? It was like the breakdown that led to the breakthrough, like a big cry or something like that in the early days of recovery, or any time, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I don't remember specific incidences of that, but that's the beautiful part of our brains, right? Is that those big things happen and we actually don't necessarily cling to it like some sort of trauma, right? Usually we have those things and we move through. I think, I remember having them because my body remembers definitely having moments. But I know that they came because I was doing the work, not because I was just sitting in a room, whether it be on Zoom or in person, like listening to the people around me. It was because I was showing up and I was doing the work and I was willing to be vulnerable and walk through the fear of, like, somebody's going to think that I'm stupid or whatever, right? Whatever those negative thoughts were that were coming, and allowed it to happen. And maybe it was like, oh, I need to set a boundary. So I set the boundary and had to brace myself for the backlash that I knew was coming. But again, I had that help, and so, yeah, absolutely. I guess I remember that I've done those things, but I don't know that I necessarily remember the pain of it. It's kind of like childbirth, like I feel like in the moment, it's super painful, but afterwards you really forget, right? Because it's like you feel so alive. It's like all the, speaking of Anna Lemke, right? Talking about pushing on the pain side of the lever in order to have the pleasure, right? And so we do have to show up for some of these more painful parts of our life and push a little bit on that, do the hard thing to get the pleasure. Because now I look back and I go, yeah, there were some really tough things in my life, but it's nothing compared to the amazing life that I have now. And because I live in the now, I don't really have to think about the pain of walking through those things. Was it painful? Yes. Was it easy? No. And do I complete and 100% empathy for anybody who is in that spot? Absolutely. And I'm happy to walk beside you on that journey.
Yeah, I definitely had my story includes other substances. And so I remember being in treatment for the first time, and, the counselor was basically telling me, like, I'm just waiting for you to cry. And I was like, that's fine. Like, I'm just ready to get out of here. And then, I wasn't then drinking at the time. So then I started really exercising while I was there. And then they took away my exercise privileges, and I just bawled. I bawled and I bawled and I bawled, I think all day in the shower. So nobody could hear me. Also, nobody could use the bathroom. But yeah, it was just this release that of years of tears that I had never cried. And, it really, for sure, you feel lighter after, but then again, I still, because I am not a crier, I schedule a cry. So I make sure that, whether it's once a month or however often, I'm going to put on that sad show or watch movies with dogs or sad puppies and get a cry in. And because it's that release we all need. And so for me, I definitely had that kind of like emotional like moment where then things started to really progress for me.
Yeah, I have that same kind of experience, Clarissa. I was out for a walk. It was in the middle of winter. I was with my husband and we were just talking, and I was really noticing that this wasn't related to food, but I was, once I got the food in this place, I could start to see some other things that needed to be healed and addressed, worked on. And I was struggling with it. And I'm like, I just want a breakthrough around this. And Sean said something like, well, do you think you're worthy of that? Or maybe you don't think you're worthy, or something like that. And I don't know what he said exactly, but it was like my dam broke. And I'm like you, Clarissa, I fight crying. I don't know why I fight it. It's crazy. I feel like there's an ocean of grief in me, and that if the dam breaks, I don't know, like I'll blow up or something. But so all of a sudden it just overcame me, and I just started bawling, and it's the middle of winter, and I veered off into the trees in the snow, and my entire body, just like this tsunami of grief just moved through. And then it was like this breakthrough. And to think that I spent years fighting it, and that really it's just so cathartic and clearing and healing. And now we don't need to be afraid of that. Once it's there and it moves through, we're like, wow, I wish I'd done that sooner. Totally. What about some practical tips around dealing with cravings, or really tough moments where you're just you're doing really well and you're this close to picking up a sweet potato fry or something like that, and you just need some really quick intervention or some powerful intervention? What is your best advice there?
So usually when I work with individuals, what I try to do is set up their craving management strategy. And so that means, we know cravings scientifically, are about 20 minutes, but every minute is going to feel like 100 hours. And the second of those minutes are going to be full of pain, because that is hunger. But, we think it's hunger, but hunger is like, I could eat. Craving is like, get out of the way. Move your children. I am getting this, and it doesn't even matter what I'm doing. So we need to figure out, what are you going to do for that 20 minutes? So maybe it's going to be some, dialectical behavior therapy skills. Something we'll do is like tips, right? So we start with temperature, and it'll say, maybe get 2 ice cubes, put them in your hand, and you're going to squeeze them in the sink and until they melt. And what we're trying to do with craving is get us out of amygdala, fight, flight, freeze, feed, all of the F's, and into prefrontal cortex, where we can use our executive functioning and make a proper decision. We want to get out of the head and into the body. And you can use like cold ice pack on the back of your neck, under your knee is another good place. Another great thing to do is like the I stands for intense exercise. And, we're not talking 30 minutes. I'm talking, 10 seconds of doing some jumping jacks, run in space in the one spot for 10 seconds. You're actually feeding into the flight response. And the whole goal of these tools is you're starting to breathe. Because often when we're in craving, we're holding our breath. Right. And so now we are oxygenating our body and our brain. So again, out of amygdala into prefrontal cortex. Next thing we can do is paced breathing. I often recommend, trauma breathing, and hand on the chest, hand on the stomach, in for 4 seconds, hold for 2 seconds, out for 6 seconds, and doing that, 10 times. The last P is the paired relaxation. And so maybe that's just like stretching, right? Get in downward dog, feel your body again, back into the body, out of the brain, because this is where our disease lives, in our brain. So we need to get out of there. And so that's another thing I'll say is like, get outside. Right? Get away from where the food is, get outside, put your feet in on the grass, right? Get yourself grounded. So maybe we'll do some grounding exercise. That might look like name 5 things you see, 4 things you hear, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can touch. There's lots of exercise that you can do around that. Maybe it's you have your favorite scent. So like people like lavender. I use just sunscreen. So I just squeeze the bottle and it's like tropical vacation all of a sudden. And for me, that's what I love. We also look at distractions, right? You just need to get through 20 minutes. Who can you call for 20 minutes? You don't have to say, hey, I'm having a craving. You can say, just talk, just ask them questions, right? Get away from yourself and your brain. What else do you like to do? Do you have a dog? Go hug your dog, go hug your partner. These are all oxytocin things that we can do as well. Do you like to do puzzles? Do you draw? Right? Go and do something to keep you busy. Some people will do a little bit on screens. I don't usually recommend that because, once we're in one addiction, it's much easier to go into another. We don't really want to numb out during this period. We want to stay present as possible. So that's some of the things we usually recommend. What about you, Molly?
Yeah, all of those things. I like you were saying, get out of your mind and into your body. So often we live from the head, the head up or the neck up, and we don't really get connected with the rest of us. And so, practicing the pause, like really like just going like, okay, recognizing, acknowledging, hey, I've been activated or I'm in a craving. And even sometimes just saying it out loud can be enough to start to re-engage the prefrontal cortex and saying like, okay, I'm going to give myself 30 seconds. I'm going to give myself a minute, and like physically watching a clock while you do that. Learning to tolerate the craving. So urge surfing is one that I really like to use with clients. And that can be done in a number of different ways. I really like to get creative with the group depending, or the individual, depending on who's in front of me, like as to what that urge surfing imagery kind of looks like. Engaging our minds, like Clarissa said, not necessarily on the phones or something that's going to like put us into a different state, like freeze. We certainly want to engage in a different way, like a puzzle or, like a crossword puzzle, something creative, get out some crayons and a color book, or even just a piece of printer paper and just start engaging in, something creative. Other things, that we can do. So like in the moment, those crisis in the moment things, I think those are all really great ideas. And there's certainly many out there. I mean, there's 50 ways to soothe without food and 50 more ways to soothe without food. We certainly don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so we like to give those as resources to our clients, but I think in the long run, prevention or setting ourselves up to protect ourselves against those things is like I think one of the best things that we can do. We can't 100% protect against, but I think walking around in the world being surprised every time we see something or smell something or whatever has got to stop. Like that has to end. It is the way of the world. As much as I would like it not to be, unfortunately, that is the environment that we live in, right? It is highly processed, highly available, very cheap, and pushed on you everywhere you go. So the sooner we can stop walking around like we're a victim of and start putting on our armor before we leave the house and making a plan, like, okay, if I'm going to the mall, I'm going in this entrance so that I don't walk past the Cinnabon that's on that entrance. If I'm going grocery shopping, this is my list and I know where those things are in the grocery store, unless, they've changed things around, which they like to do. But I have a pretty good plan and I'm sticking to these outer aisles and then I'm going straight to the checkout And yes, there's the impulse aisle there, but I'm keeping my eyes for it, right? So just having a plan and protecting ourselves, just acknowledging like there are going to be temptations out there, not today, Satan, kind of deal. Asking for support. I've spent plenty of on the phone with a client at the grocery store, or preparing a meal that isn't for them, that they're preparing for their family, whatever, like getting that support, all of those things. So yes, I think all of those in the moment things are great, but I also think setting ourselves up for success to the best of our ability beforehand is a necessary, step as well.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you. And in terms of CBT or I think you called it cognitive distortions, what are some tips you can give there? Because I think we're all familiar with the term negative mind syndrome, and addiction and negative mind syndrome are really kind of very overlapping, if not one and the same. So what are your best strategies for helping people to deal with negative thoughts that can take us back to the comfort of sugar, flour, etc.?
Sure. Yeah. Again, I think it's, it's going to be recognizing them first and foremost. So many of us live with this voice inside of our head. It sounds like our own voice. And these thoughts just come, right? We don't even necessarily recognize that they're automatic negative thoughts, right? Something happens and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I said that thing, right? Many people are just numb to the fact that that is an automatic negative thought and that it's not necessarily reality. Right. So I'm actually running a series of workshops this year, and the one that we're currently working on it addresses a lot of this. And so I like to use things like thought records. So again, a cognitive behavioral tool. I like to use thought records, as one of the ways that we can slow it down and really take a look at like, is this an accurate representation of reality? Just because this thing happened and these were my thoughts and these were my behaviors, does it have to be like that? So thinking about, I think first and foremost too, I do want to say when it comes to addiction recovery, we are not going to outthink or outfeel this. So I just want to kind of put that like caveat there. So the idea is that we're already trying or attempting new behaviors. Because that's what has to happen first for this change to come, right? So we're already showing up doing some form of work. We're already trying to abstain from things, get things out of our food plans. Maybe we're eating less of something, or we're picking a better bad choice, or we're eating it fewer times a week, or maybe we have gotten it out. Maybe we're avoiding the drive-through, whatever it might be. There's some sort of action already taking place. And then we can come in and start addressing those thoughts that get us there, because the behavior isn't going to stop until we actually do something different. So then going back and looking at those thoughts and going like, okay, I can see how I get myself into trouble with this. So I'm going to keep doing the healthy, helpful behavior. I'm going to keep doing my 20-minute walk every day. And I'm going to go back and take a look at those thoughts that are showing up that are keeping me from doing the thing I want to do, or that have kept me from doing the thing that I want to do in the past. So that's kind of my take on how, the theory behind addressing cognition issues. Yeah.
Thank you. Did you want to add to that, Clarissa?
No, I agree with Molly. It's definitely, the gnats or negative automatic thoughts are everywhere, and they're just flying around us all the time. And we gotta get away from them. But we have to do action first. Like in the beginning, you can't outthink this disease. You must outact it. And so I think it is just so important to talk about or write down what are the thoughts that come up the most often. And I really like giving it a name. Who is this voice inside your head? And for me, it's Ruth, and she's rude and relentless and always trying to get me to relapse. And when she shows up, it's just a thought. So to me now, it's a signal. What are you not doing that you should be doing? Because you've obviously neglected something in your recovery that when you're doing that thing, she is not there. And so for me, it's really just like an opportunity to look at what does my recovery maintenance program look like right now? And what do I need to add in? When my life is super stressful, I need to be way more all in on my recovery. But, through the everyday, there's a few key things that I must do every day. And if I neglect those things, that's when the thoughts show up. So again, not to be afraid of that these thoughts exist, but what can we learn from when they do show up for us?
Fantastic. And I really like the emphasis on we can't outthink and outfeel this, because I think it's a stage of recovery that we all go through this. I had two things I had hoped to bypass the hard work. One, I was hoping for a spiritual epiphany, just like, right out of AA, right? The light, I was transformed. I never again wanted to eat sugar. I call that the spiritual bypass approach, right? I was trying for the spiritual bypass approach. Didn't happen. And the second approach was, I thought if I could just heal myself enough, if I could just resolve all these other issues, I wouldn't need sugar, right? And I just realized, I was going to die 90. I was going to die, never fully feeling like I had completed this job that I thought would suddenly make me immune from the desire for sugar. That really there is no shortcut. It's abstinence and do the recovery work. And I think that if we can help people bust that delusion, we'll save them some time.
Yeah, no, Molly. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, Molly and I both talk about recovery in reality, right? In that things are still going to happen all the time. And you actually need to be forward thinking in what do I do when some of these things happen? And to also just then the things that you need to do, they need to become your go-tos, your new normal, right? But I do think the spiritual awakening happens. I just don't think it is what we think it is. It's that day when we wake up and we're like, I haven't thought about food in like 4 days. That's your spiritual awakening. It's not this like, moment. It's just like, I haven't thought about food today. That in food addiction recovery, that is what I feel is the spiritual awakening I get to hear. Or when you first start working with clients and they're like, I'm never going to tell anyone that this is what's going on for me. And then like maybe a week, 2 weeks later, they're like, I talked to my mom, talked to my sister, like, and it's the release of shame of this disease, I think, is one of the most amazing spiritual awakenings we do get to see.
Truly, it's a miracle.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. And I would say too, like you were saying, Florence, like, I think in the beginning, we're kind of always looking for this quick or easy, whatever, right? And recovery in reality is certainly, we are not a quick fix. We're hoping to be a forever fix. I mean, the word fix is implying that you're broken. And I just want to remind everybody, you guys are not broken. The food is broken. It has hijacked our brains, right? Our brains are actually doing the very thing that they are designed to do. We are already wired to double down on dopamine for food and sex because it means survival as an individual and survival as a species. And again, remember, that brain does not care if you're happy. It does not care if your body is aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't care. It only cares that we survive as an individual and as a species. Really, that heart, that oldest, toughest part, most, the strongest part of our brain. So, the other piece of that then is with our programs, because we're not telling you what to do, because we show up and this is self-determined treatment, recovery, whatever you want to call it. We're not influencers, right? So we don't have people knocking at our door hand over fist, because it actually is hard work and it's dirty and it's messy and it's gritty and it's, the ugly crying at times, like you guys were saying. It's all of those things. And it's not like, oh, hey, eat my food plan and come to these 10 groups and just do these 5 things and avoid these 5 things, and you're great and forever, and invest thousands of dollars because you'll never have to invest in yourself again. And we're all done, wipe my hands of it and we're all done. This is a lifelong thing, because it's not really about the food. It's not really about the pot. It's not really about the alcohol. It's not really about those things. That's 10%. That's the part of the iceberg that you can see out of the water. The other 90% of the iceberg under the water are things like family life, work, stress in general, emotions in general, parenting, trauma, if there's trauma in your past, right? There are just so many things that go into that other 90% that you're never done. You're just never done. And I don't mean to scare anybody by saying that either. But what I'm saying is that, like, wouldn't that be super boring if you had it all figured out and you were just done? And like, I'm about to be 39 and be like, well, 39, I got it all figured out. What am I going to do with the next 50 years of my life? Like, that would just be so boring. It's actually, I'm at a point in my journey where this is that part, that leveling up is just as much a part of my adventure as when I'm physically going and adventuring someplace brand new or trying out something brand new or whatever it might be, so that's what we're about.
Right. When recovery is, in the beginning, it's just saving our lives. It gets us unhooked from these self-destructive eating behaviors and food choices. And then the rest is, how great can my life get? Well, it's your new level of great. You're like, wow, how much greater can it get, right? There's always this progress. There's this new dream and desire of our heart that we can pursue and call in and strive for and achieve. And like life is this endless cycle of like delights and challenges and right. And I don't think it sounds discouraging at all. It kind of frees us up to go, wow, this is great. Can I get even greater? Can I be even more spiritually zen throughout my day or whatever? Or can I have an even greater impact in my career? Or can I be even a better mom or whatever, right? Yeah, you nailed on it.
If you can do the food, you can do anything. That's what I say. Because it's the toughest, for sure, addiction out there.
Totally. Awesome. Is there any final words of wisdom or encouragement that you would like to offer the audience before we wrap up today?
The only thing I would say is if you are listening, which you obviously are because this is what's happening, I would just say reach out to someone, to anyone. Listen, check out it. If what you're doing is not working, change it and reach out to someone new. There's so many free resources. This is what food addiction is real. What you have, you're not alone. And there's so many people right now who are in this field that are just excited and passionate about helping you, whether it's Florence or, us. There's just so many people. And like in our Facebook groups, someone said the other day, if you can't handle it on your own, then you shouldn't be able to. And I was like, there's like 30,000 people in our Facebook groups, plus like all these other sugar-free groups. And are you saying all those people can't handle it? No, it's a disease. This is a disease. And so you wouldn't tell someone with cancer to go handle it. So exactly, like you need treatment for this. And it's a lifelong treatment, but it's, you just need your treatment to match the level of disease that you have. It's not always going to be this hard as it is in the beginning. Me saying 4 years in, life is amazing. I'm going to Hawaii. I'm not even worried about what am I going to eat? How's it going to go? Like, I know now what I can eat. I have that food flexibility and I always already have a plan. It is my new normal. It will intuitively start to come to you as long as you continue to practice recovery.
Yeah, I would echo all of that. And I would say, do not be afraid to find your own way. There is no one right way to recover. And I don't just say that as a philosophical, feel-good statement. There is literally no evidence to suggest that there is one specific way that recovery has to happen in order to be quote unquote successful. So do not be afraid to walk your own path. Your challenge will be to find and gather around you the people that will support you in that won't keep you sick and won't try to, arm wrestle you into doing it their way. Right. And so finding your way, and you just listened to this podcast and we talked about a lot of different things that people can be doing at any given time. You don't have to wake up tomorrow morning and start putting them all into place on the very same day. Pick one thing that you can do today that gets you closer to your goal. Just one thing. That's it. Because one thing is more than what you were doing 2 days ago if you were doing nothing that gets you closer to what you want. So one thing, get consistent with it and have those people around you that are going to cheer you on, but also maybe gently encourage you to take a look at anything that's not working if your words and your behaviors are not matching, so that you can move forward.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful interview. So practical, so exciting to learn about your research. I'll have you back again when it's all wrapped up and the data's in, and maybe a year from now or every year or something, right? And we can all be have those moments of hope that you talked about, where we can see what's possible, and not just stories, but the science and the data to show it, right? To back it all up. Walking the path of whole foods is a miraculous journey towards a future brighter than we can imagine. So thanks again for your time, and thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Florence.
Thanks for tuning in this week. If you would like more interviews, more information, and more inspiration on how to break up with sugar, go to my YouTube channel, Kick Sugar Coach, or my website, kicksugarcoach.com. See you next week.